Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reedy with Future Pastimes, and in this video I want to talk about one of the most powerful and flexible cards in the Dune board game, and that is Karama. Now Karama is a Fremen word for miracle, and it's a pretty good name for this card because it is a card that has a lot of different effects that it can be used for, and there's really only two in the game, although there is a third that House Richesse can sell as one of their special treachery cards. So for now, 2 to 3 Karama cards that can show up in the game. So pretty rare until the deck reshuffles, which a lot of times it doesn't get that far. You don't play enough turns to reshuffle, especially if you've added in the extra cards from expansion 1. But there's a lot of really interesting effects that you can do, especially if you're playing Advanced Dune. So let's look at what Karama does. We'll look at the basic effects, and then we'll talk about the advanced effects and why Karama is such an important and powerful card and really integral to making Dune what it is. So this is a card that is filled with text. There was no room for any kind of illustration. The original Avalon Hill edition of the Karama had a pretty cool illustration on it, and that was back when the treachery cards were only illustrations. They had no text to explain what their effects were, but it was a really cool symbol, and I'll use that symbol for the cover of this video, so you'll be able to see it. So it's a special green card, so you play it once and then you discard it. After game setup and factions have completed their at-start actions, use this card to stop one use of a faction advantage, including alliance abilities, when a player attempts to use it. When used on a faction advantage during a battle, this must be played before battle plans are revealed. So that means that you can use the Karama card to stop a lot of the faction abilities, but not all of them. So I'll give you an example of an at start. Let's take a look at Harkonnen. They have an at start ability that is traders. At the start of the game, when you draw 4 trader cards, you can keep them all, including your own, and any leader cards of other factions can be revealed in battle as a traitor. So you cannot use a Karama card to stop the Harkonnen from calling a traitor. Similarly with the face dancers of the Tleilaxu. So those sorts of things are immune to the effects of a Karama. And another one that is worth pointing out, and I did mention it in an overview of the Fremen, it's not really an at-start advantage, and it doesn't, give you any clue on the Karama card, but the shipment action of the Fremen, where they are bringing any or all of their reserves for free onto the Great Flat or onto any other territory within 2 territories of the Great Flat. This is the only way they can get on the board, so you can't stop them from doing that. But so stopping player advantage is one of the first things, and this is particularly effective for somebody like the Bene Gesserit, who are using the voice, which is arguably one of the most powerful faction advantages in the game. So being able to stop them from doing that is very effective. Now, the way that Future Pastimes likes to do these sorts of cancel effects is you get to hear what the Bene Gesserit are going to try to use the voice on. So you don't have to preemptively say, I'm playing the Karama to prevent the Bene Gesserit from even attempting to use the voice. You can, but you are allowed to hear them say, please do not use a poison defense. And then you can say, I'm ignoring you, and I'll use a poison defense if I want to. Because you are allowed to get that information. You know that there's an excellent chance that a poison weapon is coming your way after they've used a voice. Similarly, the tradies, they say, we want to see what defense you're playing. That's a pretty good indicator that they have multiple types of weapons, so they want to know which one to use to get past your defense. You can hear that information. And then Karama, the Atreides, so that you do not have to comply with their prescience request. So, an important distinction, and there's a lot of similar gameplay in Cosmic Encounter where you get to know what somebody is going to do a little bit, and then you play the Cosmic Zap or whatever it is you're going to do on there. It can be controversial, and there's certainly a window where that can no longer be applicable, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. That's for another time. So that's just the first part of the Karama. So there's more. You can also use the Karama card to do either of the things when appropriate. Purchase a shipment of forces onto the planet at guild rates, half normal, paid to the Spice Bank. So there's a lot in that tiny little statement there. It's purchase a shipment of forces. Doesn't have to be your forces. So you could pay for anybody's force shipment with a Karama card. And that is paid to the Spice Bank, not to the Spacing Guild. So if you play a Karama to get a guild rate shipment down to the board with the Spacing Guild in the game, they do not collect payment on that. So that's a nice little perk for anyone who is not the Spacing Guild or their ally. So yeah, that is a pretty good effect there. It doesn't happen a lot, but when you're low on spice and you want to get a good number of your forces onto the board, and also don't happen to want to enrich the Spacing Guild even more, Karama can be good for that. What else? Well, bid more spice than you have without revealing this card, and or purchase a treachery card without paying spice for it. Cannot be used if your hand is full. So you cannot use the Karama to get a free treachery card if your hand is already full. But this whole part about bid more spice than you have, that's an interesting effect. And I should note for the record that the wording on this card is the updated wording on the Karama card that comes with your special replacement Karamas in the Riches and Chome expansion. So the Karama cards that come in the base game here for the 2019 edition, it's not quite the same wording. So there are some clarifications on here that will hopefully make it easier for people to play the Karama cards. Certainly, there's no wording, I think, that we could come up with that would be utterly foolproof. There will always be ways to misinterpret the way things are written. But hopefully this video will help set a lot of those things straight. So, yeah, you can bid more spice than you have. Now, normally you can't do that. If you only have 4 spice and the bid comes around to you and it's already at 4, you can't bid 5 in the hopes of just jacking up the price for a card that you do not intend to buy. Because if you do bid 5 and then everyone else passes, you can't pay for that. So the Karama card lets you do that. And that was, I don't know that it was necessarily the original design intent of Karama card. That is something that has evolved over years. Certainly the play style of Brad Johnson and other people from the WBC, World Board Gaming Championship, who've been doing Dune tournaments for decades. That is the way that they play, and it's something that definitely appealed to the original designers as we involved some of those players in play testing of expansions and discussions about FAQ for what can the Karama do or not do. So we are at that point where you can do that. It was not the way that I ever played, because it seemed to me that how could you bid more for a card when you don't have enough spice without actually playing the card in the first place? And if you're going to play the Karama card, you just take the card. You don't have to bid anymore. If you want that card, you just say, I'm playing the Karama. Thank you. I will take that card and add it to my hand, which wasn't full beforehand, because that is the rule. You can't play that Karama card if your hand is full to get a Karama card. Now, you could play the Karama during the bidding phase with a full hand to, say, stop the Atreides prescience from being able to see the next card up for bid. That's perfectly legit. Then you can bid on that card, or if you're holding another Karama card, then you can play that Karama card to get the card up for bid for free. But back to this whole day of bidding. So why would you want to do that? Well, let's say that the Emperor has a lot of spice, which is very easy to imagine, and they're bidding up for something. And maybe you have card knowledge. You know that it's a particularly good card. Or maybe you even know that it is a particularly bad card, but you're bidding it up. and taking advantage of the fact that you have that card knowledge. So that you're Atreides or their ally, or you have bribed Atreides to get a look at that card, and you say, oh yeah, I'm going to bid 6. And the Emperor is intrigued. They've got a lot of spice. They're thinking maybe it's a laser gun or some other really useful card, and they bid more, and you bid more, and you're at the point now where you don't have 10 spice, but you want to bid 10. You've got the Karama card in your hand though, and you don't have to play it. You just say, yeah, I'm bidding 11 spice or whatever, because you know the Emperor can afford it. And now he's all in. He's like, wow, you're bidding a lot of spice, and if this was a bluff, you should have stopped some time ago, because yeah, you don't know if I'm going to bid higher. You assume that I am, and of course I am, and that's the whole point, is you want them to bid higher. And so the Emperor bids 12, and you say, all right, I'm not pushing my luck any further than that. You can have that cheap hero for 12, or whatever, Balisette, hopefully something even less useful than a cheap hero. And the Emperor is like, I have egg on my face. So, and then you never have to reveal that you had that. And now there are going to be players that think, oh, maybe he's got 10 spice. I thought he only had like 7 or 8 spice, but wasn't paying enough attention. And maybe some candy player will go, maybe he just has the Karama, and he was just trying to bid up the cost on that card. And that certainly is the case. So that is another thing that you can do. And of course, yeah, you can just forego that whole bidding thing and just say, I'm playing the Karama, I'm taking that card that's up for bid, either because I want it, or I know it's good, or I don't want someone else to get it, or I'm crazy. Who knows? No judgment. You do you. So yeah, so that's all stuff that you can do in basic Dune with the Karama card, which already is a lot. But in advanced Dune, there's special Karama abilities, and every faction has a special ability. It is not on the sheet, however, which is a shame. It would be a good thing to put on there under your advanced game advantages, special Karama ability. Whatever, it didn't happen. I've made special Karama cards that indicate each faction's unique Karama ability that they can use. And it also has a handy chart that lets you know how to stop other faction abilities, or what happens when you do. And we're going to talk a little bit about that there at the end. But in the rulebook, under the advanced rules section, there will be an explanation of each faction's unique ability that they can do. So we'll give you an example or two. The Harkonnen, they can use a Karama card, and they can play it at the end of the bidding phase to select another faction and say, I'll be taking your entire hand into my hand, and that can exceed my hand limit of 8 cards, because we're just doing a little operation here where I not only see everything that you have in your hand, but then I decide how much of your hand I actually want to be in my hand. Then I will give you back the same number of cards that I took, and it may be a combination of cards from my hand and cards that were in your hand, namely the worst cards. So if you had any worthless cards, you'll be getting those back, and if I had any worthless cards, you'll definitely be getting those. Maybe if you had a particular weapon or defense that I did not have, or just don't want you to have, I'll be taking those as well. And maybe I'll give you a Thumper or a Kulan, who knows. And that's a very powerful effect, and that's why you can only do it, 1, if you have the Karama card in your hand to do it, and 2, only once per game. So if Harkonnen have 2 Karama cards, they can only pull this maneuver 1 time. The Richess, for example, they can use the Karama card to buy one of their Richess Treachery cards for a very reasonable price, and they don't have to tell anybody which one that they bought. It just goes into their hand, they take what they want. They could buy their own Karama, or the Stone Burner, or the Null Entropy box, or whatever it is that they think they need. And that's a fun game of, I wonder which card that they bought, because there's a few that are good contenders. The Atreides, for instance, they get to see the whole battle plan. They get to see what your weapon is, your defense, the leader, what you're dialing. It's fairly humiliating for the player who has got to be on the other end of that. It should be noted that the Bene Gesserit do not have an advanced Karama ability. But in advanced Dune, they have the ability to take any worthless card in their hand and play it as if it's a Karama, as if it's a full-fledged Karama. They can use it to bid higher than they have spice to pay for a card. They can just take a card. They can get guild rate shipment. They can stop an advantage. Very powerful effect, and that's why they don't need anything extra. They got plenty going on in their favor. But every faction has their one unique thing they can do once per game, and that's a pretty amazing thing to see happen. It's pretty rare, and with the rich S in the game, you could see it happen 3 times, and even more if you end up going through the deck and somebody who hasn't used their once per game Karama advantage draws the Karama again and is able to use it. That I haven't seen. That would be a nice thing to put on a Dune bucket list. 4 or 5 uses of special Karama in Advanced Dune. That's pretty amazing. So let's talk a little bit about some of the advantage canceling. Again, it's the first part of the Karama. There's always been some controversy and discrepancies and confusion over the efficacy of the Karama. And it's not really clear in the rules, and the FAQ has tried to clear it up, and it pretty much does for the most part, but not everybody's happy with the implementation. So it's an area that is rife with house ruling. But for the most part, it is instance-based, not entire phase-based. So what does that mean? Well, let's say, for instance, that you want to Karama the Atreides battle prescience, where they get to see one part of your battle plan. You play the Karama, and you can do that. But if Atreides are in 2 or 3 or more battles that round, you're doing it for one specific battle. You can't use prescience in this battle. In the next battle, it's carte blanche. They can do what they want, unless somebody else has the other Karama and wants to Karama the Gem, which I'm all for it. Karama them as many times as you can. So it's not for the whole. It's not for the whole phase. Same thing with like the voice. You can't say, all right, the Bene Gesserit are in 3 battles, and we're playing the Karama, and they cannot use the voice at all in this round. No, it's one battle. Area where it really feels like it's kind of ineffectual is, for instance, the Atreides bidding advantage, where they get to see each card up. Now, it is house ruled at my house that you play the Karama and the Atreides don't get to see any of those cards up. And kind of the way that I came to that conclusion is during the bidding round, you may look at each card as it comes up. I look at that itself as one ability, and that just happens to be re-implemented per card. As opposed to the voice, the way the voice is described is that it is described, to me, I interpret it as a per battle thing. So you may use your voice to do as you wish with respects to one of the cards they play in their battle plan. It doesn't say, for instance, in all of the battles that you're in a round, you get to do this. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a splitting hairs. I'll be the first to admit. But I think the other reason for that is I agree that stopping the Atreides from seeing one card almost feels like it's not worth it. But again, it can be a dramatic moment where you're like, all right, so they're not going to know about the one card that I know that I'm going to buy. So there is some intrigue and some excitement, but it feels like a little kind of whatever. Who's going to bother to waste a Karama for buying one card? Well, even when you're not necessarily guaranteed to get that card, maybe if you're the Emperor and somebody else doesn't have the other Karama card, to just say, oh, great, thank you for using your Karama to stop the Atreides from seeing that card. I'll be playing my Karama to just get that card for free. And that certainly is dramatic too. I'm not sure. So I think if we were going to do yet another edition of Dune, I think we would want to clear those things up as much as possible. Make them clear on the advantage sheets as well, so that you would know right away. There may even be like a Karama symbol that would let you know, yes, you can Karama this ability, and it would be written in such a way that you would be able to interpret the effectiveness of the Karama or the advantage itself however that might work out. No idea if that will ever happen. I'm sure there will be another edition of Dune one day. I may not be alive when that happens, but I think the future of Dune is very bright. So we're going to have Dune in our lives much longer and more regularly, I think, than in the past. There was a nice long gap of no Dune board game. But I think that license is out of the bag now and will continue to be available. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it is. So that is it on Karama. Let me know your thoughts on Karama. Let me know your thoughts on the effectiveness of a Karama on certain advantages. Should it be for the entire phase? I feel like that's maybe a little too strong, but it is a miracle and should happen fairly rarely. But again, I could go either way on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Any dramatic Karama stories, you know that's what I like to hear. Share your anecdotes of the Karama. Do you prefer the new wording that is available on the Chomarich S expansion version of the Karama cards? Have you taken those 2 new Karama cards and just added them to your deck and said, now there's 4 Karamas? Just Powinda, if you ask me, but I want to know if you're doing it and how that's working out. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.